Good evening, Amal Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Here are tonight's news. Philippine rescuers were searching Monday for 14 people missing after a local fishing boat collided with a cargo ship. The boats crashed early Sunday in waters southwest of Manila, capsizing the Philippine fishing vessel Liberty 5 off the coast of Occidental Mindoro province. The captain of the cargo ship, Vienna Wood, which is registered in Hong Kong, called for help a few hours later, and the vessel was being escorted to land by the Philippine Coast Guard, according to agency spokesman Commodore Armando Balillo. It wasn't immediately clear if the Liberty 5 had sunk. Philippine authorities deployed aircraft and ships in the hunt for the missing people, who included 12 Filipino crew members and 2 passengers. Strong ocean currents interrupted the search on Sunday evening, but operations resumed early Monday. The Philippines is winning the fight against coronavirus disease or COVID-19, according to Malacanang, after the country defied the number of cases projected by a University of the Philippines study. Earlier this month, the University of the Philippines released a study predicting that the country's COVID-19 cases would reach 40,000 by the end of June. Take a look.
244. Alam niyo po, isa lang ang mensahe ni Presidente: itigil ang politika sa panahon ng COVID-19. Pero hindi po tumitigil ang binabato nila sa atin. Kinakailangan naman po sagutin. May kakulangan daw, may kulang daw. Tinanong, anong kulang? Bibigay namin sa iyo. Wala naman pong tinatanong. Walang binibigay kung ano daw yung mga kakulangan. Pero sagutin po natin, tama ba ang mga hakbang na ginawa ng ating gobyerno? Ang sagot po namin, opo. Hindi po tayo perpekto. Siguro po talaga, we could have done better. Pero narito na po tayo, and one thing I can assure you, the President did the very best that he can, and we are in control of the situation. Bakit ko po nasabi yan? Tignan niyo po itong graph na ginawa po ng UP. Ang UP naman po pinagtitiwalaan natin dahil sinasabi nga nila, yung kanilang mga mathematical model nagkakatotoo. Pero ano yung kanilang ginawang kauna-unahang graph? Ilan dapat ang nagkaroon na ng sakit ng COVID-19 kung hindi po gumawa ng mga hakbang ang gobyerno ng ating presidente? Ang sabi po ng UP, kung wala po tayong lockdown na ginawa, ngayon po, meron na tayo sanang 3.6 million cases ng COVID. 3.6 million. Saan po nagkulang ang presidente? Ano pa po ang dapat ginawa niya? Naiwasan po ang 3.6 million cases ng COVID. Tingnan naman po natin yung tinatawag na positivity rate. Ito uli po yung mga numero ng mga tao sa lahat po ng mga na-test natin. Nagsimula po tayo, mataas po yan, 13% sa lahat ng 100 na tinatest natin ay positibo sa COVID. Ngayon po, makikita natin, bumaba na po tayo sa mahigit kumulang 6 sa bawat 100. Pero tingnan nyo naman po na napakalaki na lang itinaas ng ating mga na-testing. 2.5 po na nagsimula tayo noon. Ito po yung mga daily rates. Daily po ito, no? Daily test na ginagawa. Dati 2.5 tayo noong Abril. Ngayon po nasa 15,000 na tayo per day of tests. Ang ating positivity, mga around 6%. Ano pa pong indicators? Well, ito po. Ilang bahong namamatay? Tumataas po ang numero na nagkakasakit. Ang tanong, tumataas din ba ang numero ng mga namamatay? Tignan niyo po itong graph nito. Malinaw naman po na consistent ang pagbaba ng mga taong namamatay bagamat tumataas ang kaso ng COVID-19. Now, ang sabi ng WHO, tayo daw ang pinakamabilis na tumaas na kaso sa buong Western Pacific region. Totoo ba ho ito? We beg to disagree. Siyempre po, kung titignan natin yung pagtaas ng kaso, dapat yan in relation to your population. Bakit tayo ikukumpira sa Singapore? Yung Singapore, 5 milyon lang po yan. Isang syudad lang po yan, hindi pa syudad ng Quezon City o Manila. Pero kung i-divide nyo yung kaso sa per million population, ito po ang lalabas. So kung i-divide nyo po ang kaso per million population, malinaw po, hindi po magsisinungaling ang datos. Hindi po tayo ang pinakamabilis na dumami ng kaso sa Western Pacific region. Hahayaan na po namin ang datos sumagot dun sa report ng WHO.
The number of people to die with COVID-19 worldwide passes 500,000. More than 500,000 people have died in the coronavirus pandemic, according to an AFP tally, as bars in Los Angeles were ordered to close again due to surging cases in the U.S. The worldwide number of recorded infections is now just over 10 million from the virus that first emerged in China late last year. With fears growing of a full-blown second wave, the rate of contagion has doubled since May 21. The United States, the hardest-hit country, has more than 2.5 million cases alone, and efforts to reopen the world's biggest economy have been set back by a jump in new infections in big states, such as Florida and California. 1 million new infections were recorded in just 6 days, according to the AFP count, based on official sources, even as some countries loosen punishing lockdowns that have devastated their economies and thrown millions out of work. Young people, frustrated by months of confinement, have poured back to the beaches, boardwalks, and even bars, often without masks and seemingly unconcerned about social distancing. Miami announced beaches would close over the July 4 holiday weekend, and bars are also shutting their doors. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis conceded there had been an explosion in new cases as the state notched a record 9,585 cases in 24 hours. Take a look.
Stable. So that is something that we're really looking at, seeing how that's going on. That positivity increase is really being driven by a big increase over the last 3 weeks in individuals testing positive throughout the state of Florida in younger age groups, particularly 18 to 44. And if you look at that 25 to 34 age group, that is now by far the leading age group for positive tests in the state of Florida. And that's something that's pretty new. Now, but for these younger groups, I mean, they need to be thinking about who they're coming into contact with who may be in the more vulnerable groups, because you've seen this thing spread amongst them and their cohort, and if it spreads to the folks who are more elderly, that's going to result in negative outcomes. So that's where we are. I think the increased cases are being driven on a lot of it because you are seeing much more spread amongst the younger demographic. I think that positivity rate, we'd like to turn that and get that going in a downward direction. We are testing a lot more, and so part of this is testing in areas you wouldn't have been testing before, particularly in that 18 to 34 demographic. But it's important to identify who may be carrying this so that even if they are significantly ill from this, that they don't pass it to somebody else.
Much of Florida's new surge in cases appears to follow from the reopening of beaches, bars, restaurants, and other social activities. The state's beaches are full, and throngs of revelers pack its waterways on boats. Young people, as earlier mentioned, frustrated by months of confinement, have poured back to the state's beaches, boardwalks, and bars, often without masks and seemingly unconcerned about social distancing. Miami had announced beaches would close over the July 4 holiday weekend, and bars are also shutting their doors. Meanwhile, bars in Los Angeles and 6 other Californian counties were ordered to close again on Sunday as parts of the U.S. reimposing shutdown measures to try to quell a surge in coronavirus cases. Let's take a look.
Look, bottom line is, as we move forward, to be sober about the reality that, again, we are still in the first wave of this pandemic. To again remind ourselves the power and potency of our individual decision-making, our ability to bend this curve, ultimately to bend it down until we have a vaccine, until we are in a position to turn the page on COVID-19. It's your individual decision-making that will determine our fate and future, our capacity to mitigate the trend lines that you've seen that we presented here today, to mitigate the likelihood and need that we ever have to toggle back on these stay-at-home orders and revert back to where we were just a few months ago. We don't intend to do that. We don't want to do that. But I want to make this clear. We are prepared to do that if we must.
Just about half an hour ago, I learned that the governor is closing down the clubs and bars right now, unfortunately. And I don't feel as if that is fair. I feel like it's against our constitution right now, because we have guys that need jobs, need money to pay rent.
Like, I don't want to think that first time coming here to the restaurant, next thing you know, I can't go out or I can't go to this restaurant I enjoyed. So I think it's, you know, unfair.
In a Twitter post, he said, due to the rising spread of hashtag COVID-19, California is ordering bars to close in Fresno, Imperial, Kern, Kings, Los Angeles, San Joaquin, and Tulare, according to California Governor Gavin Newsom. On Twitter, about 13.5 million people live in the 7 counties, accounting for roughly 1/3 of California's population. The hardest hit U.S. states are currently in the South and West, where many state leaders pushed for early economic reopenings. But Californian bars were only allowed to reopen from June 12, with the final decision left to local authorities. Bars in Los Angeles, the second largest city in the U.S., had been open since June 19. In the U.S. state of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott has warned that the coronavirus has taken a very swift and very dangerous turn in the state after it started reopening. Take a look.
After the opening was announced on April the 27th, we continue to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in the state of Texas, so much so that all the way until the 26th or 27th of May, we went to the lowest positivity rate that we ever achieved during the course of this pandemic. It was 4.27% at that time. But we need to understand that COVID-19 has taken a very swift and very dangerous turn in Texas over just the past few weeks.
Several southern and western states have recorded a surge in cases after lockdown restrictions were eased. On Sunday, Governor Abbott said that as many as 5,000 people a day were being admitted to hospital for treatment. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said that Texas would be issued additional COVID-19 testing kits for as long as necessary. The latest upsurge pushing the nation's total of declared cases to more than 2.5 million. U.S. deaths now exceed 125,000, about a quarter of the world total. This prompted a growing chorus of calls for much tougher rules and enforcement of restrictions. The tension between reopening battered economies, efforts pushed in the U.S. by President Trump, and public health concerns is a source of debate in nearly every country. All right. Meanwhile, in a public advisory to Filipinos in the United States, Consul General Adelio Angelito put out this public advisory. Take a look. He said in view of the increasing number of COVID-19 cases in many parts of the United States, Filipinos in the U.S. are strongly advised to continue abiding by the health protocols imposed by local authorities. Please wear face masks and follow social distancing rules in public places and whenever you are in the company of people who are not members of your household. As COVID-19 continues to spread across the U.S., so do the attendant risks to individual health and security, including some incidents of crimes targeting Asians and Asian Americans. During these challenging times, please continue to exercise increased vigilance and take necessary measures to ensure your safety. Stay well and safe, mga kababayan. The number of infections recorded in a week in Brazil reached a record 250,000. Take a look.
The other one is actually the wind in the city.
In Thailand, nightlife will restart with some restrictions this week. The kingdom announced today part of a return to normalcy as it prepares to welcome business travelers and medical tourists after a ban on foreign entry. So far, Thailand has 3,169 cases and 58 deaths from the coronavirus. A low toll, considering the kingdom in mid-January became or was the first country outside China to register a case. But the country's tourism-reliant economy has been hit hard by the border closures, while a halt to its infamous nightlife has left the kingdom's informal workers in bars, massage parlors, and karaoke lounges adrift. Premier Prayut Chan-o-cha said the most at-risk businesses will be allowed to reopen from Wednesday, as there has been no local transmission of the virus for more than a month. He said, quote, "The most important thing we care about are the people who have no income for their families." And he also said the government is confident that the health system is ready to handle any situation. Beginning July 1, bars, clubs, and karaoke lounges can reopen, though they must adhere to a midnight closing time and have social distancing measures, according to Tawisin Visayano Thin, spokesman for the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration. Massage parlors and tea houses, which sometimes act as fronts for brothels, will also have to register customers using the government's tracking app. Tawisin said staff must be tested for COVID-19 from time to time, and there should be no sex trade. Thailand will also relax entry restrictions on foreigners with work permits or with Thai spouses and families and people who wish to enter the kingdom for medical services. Business travelers from Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and China, including Hong Kong, will also be allowed in, provided they pay for quarantine in hotels. The selected countries and cities are, quote, "important to our economy. They control the spread of the pandemic well, and they have the same health and efficiency standards," according to Mr. Tawisin. Tourists will still be barred, although authorities floated the idea of travel bubbles earlier this month. In Greece, tourists will be required to complete an online questionnaire hours before they come into the country. Joining us live from Athens is Tristan Regino. Hello, Tristan.
Tourists traveling to Greece will be required from Wednesday to complete an online questionnaire 48 hours in advance to determine whether they need to be tested for coronavirus on arrival. Over the weekend, the Greek government ended random testing of travelers according to their country of origin, which had confused tourists who didn't know whether they should spend a night in a hotel to be tested after landing in Athens and Thessaloniki or go directly into quarantine. Greece, which has a relatively low coronavirus death toll at 191, has launched a promotional campaign to revive tourism, which accounts for a quarter of its gross domestic product, and hopes to reassure potential travelers as well as Greeks fear of resurgence of the pandemic with the return of tourists. Under the new protocol, travelers are given scannable barcodes after they fill out a questionnaire with personal details such as their country of origin and the countries they have traveled through in the last 15 days. The questionnaire is mandatory until August 31. Barcodes will be scanned from printed paper or mobile devices at ports of arrival, which will determine whether travelers will be directed to the exit or to a screening area. Those who are tested will be told to isolate at the address provided on the questionnaire while waiting for the results. All airports in the country will open to international flights by Wednesday. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tristan, for your updates there in Athens, Greece. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Alma. We live in interesting times, and thank you.
All right. Thank you. Eagle News, we'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Robin, and I'm 5 years old. My mom and dad said,
Welcome back. Baloch separatists opened fire and hurled a grenade at the Pakistan Stock Exchange in Karachi Monday. According to authorities, killing 6 people, including a policeman. 4 security guards, a police officer, and a bystander were killed in the melee, while local police chief Ghulam Nabi Memon said all 4 assailants were also dead. Let's take a listen on some of the reactions.
10 a.m. in the morning, 4 terrorists tried to enter the building. They were intercepted at the front gate, which is right in front of you, and they came in a car, which is supposedly a Toyota car, and they were equipped with fully armed, equipped with machine guns and equipped with other type of weapons also.
The Balochistan Liberation Army later claimed responsibility in a message sent to AFP saying an elite unit of fighters had carried out the assault. The separatists have carried out a string of high-profile attacks across the country in recent years, including in the southern port city. The BLA is one of several insurgent groups fighting primarily in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province, which has been rocked by separatist, Islamist and sectarian violence for years. The group has targeted infrastructure projects and Chinese workers in Pakistan multiple times in recent years, including during a brazen daylight attack on Beijing's consulate in Karachi, which killed 4 people back in 2018. Last year, the U.S. State Department designated the BLA as a global terrorist group, making it a crime for anyone in the United States to assist the militants and freezing any U.S. assets they may have. The man shot dead by police during a stabbing attack in Glasgow has been identified. He was from Sudan. Let's learn the details more from our ABC correspondent in Scotland, Caroline Kennedy. Hello, Caroline.
So, police officer said, the Scottish police officer said that a man was shot dead after a suspected stabbing attack on Friday in Glasgow city centre at the hotel that has been housing asylum seekers for the last few months throughout the coronavirus outbreak and left 6 others injured, including their own policeman. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon praises the police in action of this attack in Glasgow. So let's have a listen.
The injury of a police officer, of course, reminds us of the bravery of our police service, and they run towards danger as the rest of us would run away. And I want to express my thanks to the police for what appears to me to be the very calm and professional way that they responded to this incident, and undoubtedly ensured that a very, very serious incident didn't become much worse. Secondly, we don't know all of the details. We don't know what has given rise to this incident, but the police have just in the last couple of minutes confirmed that their assessment now is that this is not a terrorist-related incident, and I hope that will give some reassurance to people, not just in Glasgow but across Scotland. This has been a dreadful afternoon for the city of Glasgow, particularly for those who have been directly involved. Those injured, obviously, but there will have been people who witnessed this afternoon, particularly in the location of this incident, quite horrific events. And I think I will not be alone across Scotland tonight in thinking of everybody who has in any way been affected by what unfolded.
Police Scotland said that the incident at the Park Inn Hotel in the city centre was not being treated as a terrorist incident. The individual who was shot by armed police has died. Assistant Chief Constable Steve Johnson said, adding to the situation was contained and there was no risk to the general public. He also said that the wounded 42-year-old police officer was in critical but stable condition, but gave no details on how he or the other victims were injured. The 5 other victims are all men aged 17, 18, 20, 38 and 53, the police officer said without revealing their condition. Police were called to the hotel at around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, 1300 GMT time, and the surrounding area was cordoned off. One man who said he lived in the hotel's 3rd floor told Sky News Television he had heard a man shouting for help and a woman screaming. He went down to investigate and found that the lift that he was going into was covered in blood. He then saw 2 people gasping for air after being stabbed. The Guardian reported that the statement of the injured policeman said, "Despite suffering serious injuries myself, I know that the swift actions of my colleagues saved lives and prevented a far more serious incident. I would like to thank the medical staff at Queen Elizabeth University Hospital for their outstanding care in the hours of following this incident. Finally, I would like to thank the public for all their kind messages of support and for the good wishes from all the police Scotland. It means a lot and has brought myself and my family comfort at this difficult time." The hotel was being used as a house for asylum seekers during the coronavirus outbreak. Homelessness and human rights charity Positive Action in Housing tweeted, the Kurdish Scottish Association was quoted as by saying the Glasgow Times newspaper there were about 100 asylum seekers in the hotel at the time. Residents had complained about being kept inside and a lack of money, while some had mental health problems. It said, calling out the situation shocking. Positive Action in Housing has previously voiced concerns about single men, women, families, and pregnant women, many of them vulnerable, being dumped into hotels. Britain's Interior Ministry has been using empty hotels across the country to house asylum seekers and refugees during the global pandemic. UK Interior Minister Petri Patel said it has been deeply alarming, while Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he was deeply saddened by the terrible incident. The incident comes less than a week after 3 people were stabbed to death in a park in Reading in the southeast of England. The police were treating this as a terror-related. A 25-year-old man widely said to be Libyan asylum seeker was arrested in connection with the random stabbing that has killed 3 friends. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Caroline, for your updates there in Scotland. You take care and you stay safe.
Thank you. You too, Alma. I'm Caroline Kennedy, and I'm reporting from Scotland. We live in interesting times.
Hong Kong police banned a major demonstration against China's planned national security law for the city that critics fear would smother the financial hub's treasured freedoms, according to organizers. The Civil Human Rights Front, or CHRF, said the force had rejected its applications for rallies on July 1, the 23rd anniversary of the former British colony's handover to China. It's the first time the annual march has been banned since the CHRF began them in 2003, when 500,000 people came out to protest against the local government's attempt to introduce a national security law. That bill was shelved, but Beijing has decided to impose a new security law in the city, claiming Hong Kong protesters were involved in separatism. Police cited the risk of violence for the decision and said the gatherings and march would also pose a severe threat to public health due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In May, Beijing announced a draft national security law which will bypass Hong Kong's legislature to tackle terrorism and separatism in a restless city it now regards as a direct national security threat. The law would enforce punishment for subversion and other offenses in Hong Kong, but critics see it as potential knockout blow for freedoms and autonomy enjoyed by the city. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration said Friday it was restricting visas for a number of Chinese officials for infringing on the autonomy of Hong Kong as Congress seeks tougher sanctions. In response, China announced on Monday visa restrictions on U.S. citizens who have behaved egregiously over Hong Kong ahead of the expected approval by Chinese lawmakers of a controversial national security law for the city. The country is moving forward on a security law that would punish subversion and other offenses against the state in Hong Kong, which saw massive and sometimes violent pro-democracy protests last year. On Friday, as earlier said, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration said it was restricting U.S. visas for a number of unspecified Chinese officials for infringing on the autonomy of the Asian financial hub. In response, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said Monday that the U.S., quote, scheme to obstruct the passage of the Hong Kong national security law will never prevail. Zhao said to target the U.S.'s above wrongful actions, China has decided to impose visa restrictions against American individuals who have behaved egregiously on matters concerning Hong Kong. The United States, Britain, the European Union, and the United Nations rights watchdog all voiced fears the law could be used to stifle criticism of Beijing, which uses similar laws on the authoritarian mainland to crush dissent. The Deputy Regional Director of Amnesty International, Joshua Rosenzweig, comments on the implications of the national security law in Hong Kong regarding human rights and freedoms in the semi-autonomous region. Let's take a listen.
Well, there are a number of reasons to be concerned about this national security law. I think the first thing is that based on the experience of the way that national security is dealt with in mainland China, I think we're expecting the definitions of these four criminal offenses: separatism, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces, to be defined in a way that's really vague and imprecise. And that's going to have consequences in terms of the way in which this law is applied. Almost everything you need to know about this law you can see from the way that it's being rushed through and put into creation. The fact that the authorities in Beijing haven't made have made very little information public about the law. They've had almost no meaningful consultation on this, and they're basing it on these exaggerated claims that Hong Kong is facing some existential threat from terrorism or interfering foreign forces. there's been no real clear evidence put forward to justify the need for a national security law in Hong Kong. Basically, all of the things that the authorities seem to be mainly concerned about in terms of Hong Kong can be dealt with under existing statute. So I think that it's really important for those expressions to continue, and for the international community, assuming that this law actually takes effect in the next day or so, the international community needs to put some action behind those expressions of concern and monitor very closely the way in which this law is implemented in Hong Kong going forward, and ensure that it cannot be used in ways that violate people's human rights. The authorities here in Hong Kong have been saying a lot about how this national security law is not something to worry about, that it will be carried out in accordance with the basic law and international human rights protections. I would like to take some comfort in those professions, but the reality is that the same people who are saying this, actually, they haven't seen the law itself, and they don't really know the extent to which the law itself carves out exceptions to human rights for the enforcement of so-called and punishment of so-called threats to national security.
The Communist Party leadership said the national security law is needed to end political unrest after the city was rocked by months of pro-democracy protests last year, but critics fear the law would smother the financial hub's treasured freedoms. International critics and opposition politicians in Hong Kong have also voiced fears that the law will effectively end the one country, two systems arrangement, granting the former British colony freedoms unseen on the mainland. Xinhua news agency said earlier this month that China will set up a national security agency in the semi-autonomous city, and that the new law will override any existing Hong Kong laws that may conflict with it. China had agreed before Britain handed the territory over in 1997 to let Hong Kong maintain certain liberties and autonomy until 2047, including legislative and judicial independence and freedom of speech. Article 23 of Hong Kong's mini-constitution, the Basic Law, says the city must enact a bill to prohibit treason, secession, sedition, and subversion against the Chinese government. But an attempt to pass it through the city's legislature in 2003 was shelved because of mass protests. In other news, France's Greens on Monday urged President Emmanuel Macron to prioritize the environment as they savored big wins in the municipal elections, seen by many as a rebuke of the centrist leader's top-down governing style during his first 3 years in office. Yannick Jadot, head of the Europe Ecology Green Party, or EELV, said the results proved that President Macron had been in denial over growing public demand for ambitious measures to fight climate change. Jadot told Europe One Radio the EELV would not join Macron's government as part of a widely expected cabinet shakeup, saying instead the president should enact, as he promised, 149 measures proposed this month by his Citizens' Convention on Climate. President Macron will meet the council's members Monday when he plans a first response to their proposals, which included reducing motorway speed limits and making ecocide a crime. Voters handed the Greens control of key cities, including Lyon, Bordeaux, and Strasbourg, while Socialist Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo was re-elected after forming an alliance with the EELV. Traditional right-wing and socialist parties manage respectable showings, with the right-wing Republicans winning in more than half of the cities with more than 9,000 residents. Government spokeswoman Sibeth Ndiaye expressed disappointment late Sunday over the LREM's poor showing, which analysts attributed to President Macron's failure to build the party into a viable force at the local level. Michael Martin was elected Ireland's new Prime Minister on Saturday after his centre-right Fianna Fáil party sealed a historic coalition deal with longtime rivals Fine Gael as well as the Green Party. The election of Martin, who replaced Leo Varadkar as Taoiseach during a special sitting of the Dáil Parliament, comes after months of negotiations between the parties following a February election. These challenges included affordable housing, hospital waiting times, and climate change, he said. Ireland also faces the economic fallout from the virus, as well as a potential no-deal Brexit. Among Martin's ministerial nominations, Fine Gael leader Varadkar was named Tennessee Deputy Prime Minister and head of the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. Green Party leader Eamon Ryan is set to lead offices of climate change and transport, as incumbent Foreign Minister Simon Coveney, who led the Republic in Brexit talks, was named to remain in office. Incumbent Finance Minister Pascal Donohoe is also due to remain in post as he runs as a candidate to head the Eurogroup, which brings together the Eurozone finance ministers. Eagle News will be right back.
Lano.
U.S. fracking firm Chesapeake bankruptcy, saying it had entered restructuring to erase $7 billion in debt as the fossil fuel industry reels from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The Oklahoma-based oil and gas producer, once a leader in the U.S. shale boom that has transformed global energy markets, said the move was necessary despite efforts to improve performance and reduce its dues. Chesapeake said it filed for bankruptcy under Chapter 11 proceedings, which allow a company that is no longer able to repay its debt to restructure without pressure from creditors. The U.S. shale industry was launched by medium-sized and smaller producers using production techniques like fracking as they engineered a drilling boom in several states. The boom lifted the United States past Saudi Arabia to become the leading oil producer in the world, a distinction won through billions of dollars in loans erased or eased by low interest rates. But crashing oil prices have dealt a blow to producers, and exploration companies in the U.S. and Canada now have an estimated $86 billion in debt maturing between 2020 and 2024, including 62% rated junk or speculative. Shale production is controversial because in order to extract oil and gas, a high-pressure mixture of water, sand, and chemical is blasted deep underground to release hydrocarbons trapped between layers of rock. Environmentalists argue that the process, known as fracking or hydraulic fracturing technology, may contaminate groundwater and even cause small earthquakes. Starbucks said it will pause its advertising on social media while it studies ways to stop the spread of hate speech as part of a growing corporate movement. Amid an intense national debate over racism and frequent eruptions of ugly, hate-filled speech on social media, Starbucks thus followed the lead of other big corporations like Unilever and Coca-Cola, which announced similar pauses on Friday. Calls for an advertising boycott of Facebook next month have come from the NAACP, the big civil rights groups that defends African Americans' interests, and the Anti-Defamation League, which fights anti-Semitism. But like Coca-Cola, Starbucks said it wasn't joining that boycott. Starbucks, which employs large numbers of racial minorities in the U.S., has itself faced criticism over its handling of racial issues. In April 2018, the arrest of two black men in a Starbucks restaurant in Philadelphia who had made no purchases but refused to leave when asked caused a nationwide uproar. The men who were marched out of the restaurant in handcuffs were later released without charge. The chain issued an apology, made clear that its policy going forward would not allow a repeat of the Philadelphia incident, and closed its more than 8,000 company-operated U.S. stores to allow employees to receive racial diversity training. Asia's largest mixed martial arts promotion One Championship will return behind closed doors in Thailand next month after a 5-month break because of the coronavirus, according to officials on Monday. One, which promotes cards across the region in mixed martial arts, Muay Thai, and kickboxing, last put on a major show at the end of February. The Singapore-based company has since canceled several events and slashed 20% of staff, although it has also revealed a $70 million funding boost from institutional investors. With virus outbreaks slowing in many parts of Asia, the company said its flagship events would restart with an event without fans in the Thai capital Bangkok on July 31st. Jurgen Klopp has urged Liverpool fans to celebrate in a safe way during the coronavirus crisis after chaotic scenes marred the club's Premier League title celebrations. Take a look. Thousands of Liverpool fans gathered at the Pierhead for a second night of celebrations on Friday after the club became champions of England for the first time in 30 years. Now, police said officers were subject to violent confrontations and had glasses and bottles thrown at them as the celebrations continued in the city center into the early hours. Klopp, and in an open letter to fans in the Liverpool Echo, said he did not love the scenes that took place at Pierhead. He said, "I'm a human being and your passion is also my passion, but right now the most important thing is that we do not have these kinds of public gatherings," wrote Klopp. He also wrote, "We owe it to the most vulnerable in our community, to the health workers who have given so much and whom we have applauded, and to the police and local authorities who help us as a club not to do this." Klopp said fans should celebrate in a safe way in private settings to avoid spreading the COVID-19 disease. Liverpool's mayor, Joe Anderson, condemned the scene, saying they had brought a negative focus on the city. Klopp also praised fans for their support during the season, which was interrupted for 3 months by the pandemic. He described it as an incredible time for incredible supporters of an incredible club in an, quote, incredible city. And finally, in our news, cat cafes have reopened across Bangkok, with the felines refusing to maintain the 1-meter social distance after a month locked inside away from humans. Take a look.
It's a good chance that the cafe just opened, so I decided to come right away. It's been lonely at home. You know, staying in the house for a whole month is pretty stressful. But coming here, the day that I could come to this cafe is pretty much in the outer world. You know, the other feelings. You finally break the chain and come to the place that you wish to come.
Friendly felines give some much-needed outside contact for people who have mostly been confined home during weeks of semi-lockdown. Now, in compliance with the new normal and safety measures outside Catterday, the cafe staff take the temperature of the customers before welcoming them inside. The establishment is cleaned several times a day to comply with Thailand's strict measures for the reopening of the economy. And as a precaution, the cats also have dry baths. Their fur is also brushed, and eyes, they're cleaned every day. And before we close, we leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.